In Elements of the Gods, you are a young god at the dawn of civilization, using the powers of the elements to influence worshippers to do your bidding. And here to tell us a little bit more about it is Dustin Culbertson, the CEO of Side Room Games. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you are publishing this game on behalf of the developer, but why don't you tell us a bit about what Elements of the Gods is?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so you kind of gave a quick overview. Basically, yes, you are young gods at the dawn of the civilization, and you are using the five elements, sort of the basic elements, fire, wind, water, earth, and death, in order to manipulate the worshippers in your world to do your bidding. And so, using those elements, you will move them around in different configurations on the board in order to either have them build monuments to sort of for you, build gardens to surround your monuments to bring more worshipers in, as well as do divine sacrifices in order for you to be able to gain more power. And that's sort of the basic theme. And the gist of the game is you're using the elements, manipulating the meeples that are on the board, like I said, into different configurations to either build monuments, build gardens, and score points. So that's the basic gist. It's a very uh, it's for us. We have been previously, most of the games we've published already have been a lot smaller games,
Mm-hmm.
usually in that sort of smaller box to even like tuck box size games. So this is
Okay.
our first foray into a larger game. So it's got these big gigantic monuments that you're moving around the board and kind of pushing these little tiny meeples all across the board. So visually, it's a very interesting looking game, and it really they've done a great job. The team has on the art and the development for the graphic design and everything. So we're really excited about this one.
It's got an interesting gameplay. I've seen there's not a lot of info out there for the game right now prior to your Kickstarter, but I watched one small review of it, and it looks like the meeples are all out on the board as you start. Like you don't
Yeah.
own the meeples yourself, but they're all different colors. How does the actual gameplay work, and how do those meeples come into play? What are you doing with them?
Yeah, sure. So basically, as you set the game up, you'll set depending on the player count, but different board sizes as far as the grid size. But you'll be basically putting these meeples all across the board. And yeah, as you mentioned, you don't actually own or have control of the meeples per se. We kind of liken it to it's not really area control; it's more like area manipulation.
Okay.
Really, what you're trying to do is figure out the best way to change the board state using the elements, and then play cards from your hand that either like I mentioned, either build the monuments, build gardens, or play you divinity cards which score you points. And
Okay.
so it's a more interesting concept that I haven't seen before. When we first got introduced to the game about a year or so ago, it was Origins 2019 is when we first
Mm.
playtested it. And we were just like, wow, I've never seen anything like this before. And so that's why we were really excited about publishing it, and we could tell immediately, like just from seeing like even the very basic prototype copy, you could see like there's a lot of ways to really make the theme come out and shine through with the cool mechanics.
Right, right. It is very cool looking game, very cool mechanics. It's I don't think I've seen anything like it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's
It's
that's what really drew us. Is that like I said, we played a lot of games. We've been me and the rest of the guys on the team have been gaming for a very long time. And like I said, when we first played it, we're like, I've never played anything like this.
mhm.
So this definitely deserves to get published and get it out to the rest of the people.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, so I want to know how that that first meeting with the creators, you guys obviously saw it at the thing. Was it an instant like we have to get to involved with these and publish this game? How did that those first conversations go?
Yeah, it really was. We had before Origins, this was the first time that all four of us from the team had gone to the convention, and we set up a couple different meetings with designers, to do hear some pitches, play test some games. And Jay was the first game we played, and as we were walking through it and playing it, we kind of forgot that we were playing a prototype. We were just playing the game,
Nice.
and then afterwards we were like, "Wow, that was really good." And so we slept on it. That was a pretty late game night. The next morning, like when everybody woke up, we're like, "Yeah, we want to sign that game." So we played a couple of different other games from different designers, but we immediately got with Jay and we're like, "Yeah, let's make this happen." And so I think by the end of the con, we had a verbal agreement. And then like right when we got back, like on Sunday or Monday night, we had the contract signed and we were
Right.
ready to go. And so we spent the last year doing a little bit of development, tweaking it, developing a solo variant for it, and doing like all the artistic development on it. And so I think it's going to be a really good game and product, and like I said, we're really excited for this one.
Yeah, I want to jump in on, you mentioned that the solo variant. So the game is 1 to 5 players, and so you have developed a solo variant which didn't exist, I'm assuming, when you first met Jay.
Yeah.
How does the solo variant work, and how does it differ from the main game?
So the basic mechanics are the same. The major difference is you're sort of playing like an automated deck where you have a rival god that you're competing against,
Okay.
and he has sort of a set pattern on how he builds monuments and gardens, and we developed sort of like a very it is a flow chart, but it's very straightforward. I mean, the rival is trying to optimize his moves as best he can. And so then there's a solo deck that also not only do you have to compete against the rival, there are sort of constraints on you. So the
Oh.
way the solo deck is comprised is you have for your first, so each turn you play one element and then you play a card. So the normal game, you get to pick whatever element is available. But in the solo variant, you basically have for your first move, you have one of 3 options for an element. And then for your second turn in the round, you have to use a specific element. And
Oh.
so when you see the round card, which dictates sort of what you're going to be able to do that turn, it basically turns you into an analysis mode where it's like, okay, I have to do this one, and I only have 3 options for my other one. How can I manipulate the conditions in order to score points, play the monument cards that I want at the right time, and sort of keep the rival as best at bay from doing some of the things that might mess up your board state you're looking for.
Okay, so you're basically, for the AI, you're going through a set script, sort of if-else
Yes.
conditions based on
Yes.
condition of the board. Is that the idea?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So basically, he kind of has a set play style where he builds a monument, builds a garden, and then scores divinity points. And each time when it comes to building a monument or a garden, he has sort of a logic tree that he goes through as far as when he builds. It's sort of there's a little bit of randomness in there as far as where he builds, but sort of once that random piece, that first piece, which is which column on the board he builds,
Right.
then he goes through a logic decision loop where he tries to optimize the best way to play it. Jay, when we were working on the different ways to do that, he really wanted to make sure that it was a good experience playing against sort of an AI in that he wasn't making silly choices. He was making really solid choices, even though they might start off random. He's still trying to optimize in order to kind of give that challenge that you want in a solo variant.
I could see the solo variant being, you give it to, you sit down like with my wife who doesn't play games and say, you know what, you just be the AI. Just follow the rules. It'll teach you how to
Yep.
play. Not only will she be playing, but she'll learn how to play just by following the steps. Like, oh, you
Yeah.
did this, so okay, I need to do this and this. And
Yep.
that would be a really interesting way to actually teach someone who doesn't normally play board games how to play the game.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting about this one too, and William Brown from Hunger Gamer, he did a playthrough and like a preview video for us,
Okay.
and he was commenting that this is one of the few games that his wife has really loved, and I think part of it, at least from his perspective, and I think in general, it's nice because it doesn't have a complicated rule set. It's very easy to teach. There's only, like I said, there's 5 elements that manipulate the board certain ways. And then when you play the cards, it's fairly straightforward. The graphic design helps sort of enable that as well. It's like, oh, in order to build a monument, I have to have 2 different types of worshipers on a space, and
Right.
it clearly says what type I need. But while the rule set is short and simple, there's a lot of tactics and a lot of strategy that kind of plays out over the course of the game, which sort of gives it that depth. And even he was mentioning that, like, if you want analysis paralysis to happen on this, you can. So you have to kind of be wary because you might just keep staring at the board and like looking, okay, if I do this, maybe I can get this piece there and
Like a
play
good
this
chess
card.
game.
It really is, and it has a little bit of that, it has a little bit of the abstractedness, but the theme is still there, so you don't really feel it. And when you're
Right.
moving these big, gigantic pieces on the board, and you're pushing guys, and you're playing the the death element, and picking up a handful of worshipers and sacrificing them, it has this kind of cool feel and development as the game progresses. And then in the end of the game, when you have like a 3 or 4 or 5 player game, you just tons of monuments everywhere and gardens, and it just looks really neat on the board, like you've actually kind of accomplished something, and the end state is it's very satisfying.
That's awesome.
So you mentioned there's several different strategies in order to win. What sort of strategies would you recommend for first time players? And second thing, tell me which strategies I'm going to use to beat Sean when we play.
So when you play, so at the very beginning, you'll set up a game where you will have three different in-game scoring conditions. And in the basic game, you basically have three different types. You have one where it's how many different types of worshipers of a specific color are next to your monuments. Another one is how many of a specific color of worshipers are in gardens next to your monuments. And then the last one is how many worshipers you have sacrificed over the course of the game. You'll score more points the more guys you have next to you. So one of the things that I think is an early strategy to kind of see and pick up on is if you keep your monuments closer together, you can do double counting at the end, right? So if I have a space between two of my monuments and it's full of, maybe it's full of zealots, red meeples, and I have a card or there's a card that's public scoring that allows you to score, 1 point for every red meeple for a zealot, you get to double count it, right? Because it's each monument. So I have 5 next to one monument, and that same spot is next to my other monument. And so what you can really do is if you have a really tight-knit group of monuments and some gardens, you almost, as an opponent, you have to see that and recognize that and try to slow that down because you can just score massive points at the end game just because you get to count each time for that scoring condition.
That one meeple counts for every
exactly
everything it's beside. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so for sure, it's interesting, and like you can get if you have a very crowded board state, moves can sometimes help you, but also help your opponent, and you have to kind of take that into consideration because just of all the different monuments on the board and how much that's going to score.
So you must have some really fun stories to tell based on your playtesting. Do you have anything that comes to mind as like, I can't believe this happened sort of thing?
So the one that kind of cracked me up here recently was we finally got the review copy. So before we had just played, wooden cubes and like sort of like, cardboard chits for like the monuments.
Okay.
And we finally got the review copy, and it was our first big play. And it was all 4 of us as part of the company, and we just had these massive, massive scores. And I thought for sure, I'm like, okay, I'm going to play this perfectly. I'll have one more turn, and I'm going to score a ton of points because I had the 2 cards in my hand that I really needed. And sure enough, one of the guys is like, oh, look, I just scored my 5th divinity card, which triggers the end game. And it was like literally the last play in the round, and I'm like, shit. I was like, no! I'm like, I needed one more turn. And then that one, we had just crazy high scores because we all, we played it before and we understand the game, and we had all done a great job. And so it was, some of the highest scores I've seen, at least in that type of game. And we were all I think the lowest score was 150 or 160.
Wow.
But it was still a very tight game. I think the difference between first and last was maybe 15 to 20 points. And so it was really tight. And one of the last moves I had a perfect little triumvirate of monuments with a bunch of guys right in the middle. And sure enough, one of the guys came through and used wind and just pushed them all away from my garden that I had.
No.
And I was like,
oh, no.
So it's nice because you get that interplay where if you want to be all by yourself and kind of do your own thing, you can, but you have to be wary because people will see what you're doing and see what you're stacking up against them, and they're like, okay, I gotta break that up.
That's awesome. So the one review I saw today, I'm sorry, I would say who it was, and I can't remember who it is offhand who I watched, but they're saying that at the last minute, someone who's behind can very easily come ahead and win.
Yes.
What kind of things can do that? How do you go from being so far behind to being the winner?
So part of it is you score during the game as you place monuments and play your divinity cards, but because of the public scoring cards, and then at the end you also, any cards that you have in your hand that are divinity cards become private. And so if you look at the cards, there's a top piece that shows what happens if you play it in game, and then there's a bottom piece of the divinity cards that is the in-game scoring. Okay. And so sometimes you might get a really good one in your hand early in the game, and you see, oh, this is a good one because it scores me 3 points for every mason that I've killed with death.
Okay.
Well, I'll play death, and I just keep grabbing more and more masons and sacrificing them and putting them into my I can't remember what the actual name of it for is. Basically, like where I keep my souls that I've captured.
Okay.
And so then all of a sudden, as in-game scoring approaches and you put down the cards you have in your hand, if you played it well and kept some good ones in your hand, you can score quite a few points in-game without people. They might have an idea of what you're trying to do, but you won't know for sure until they hit the table and you're like, oh,
gotcha.
shoot. Not only does he have that card, but he has two of them, and he scores double the points that he was planning on scoring, type of thing. So.
Wow.
Oh.
Sushi Roll Games, I believe, was the website that.
Oh yeah,
That,
Sushi Ball. Yep.
Sushi Ball. That's it. Thank you. I
Yeah,
knew-
they're actually a local review group in Albuquerque. We just met. So
Nice. Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, sure, I can definitely. We can meet up and I can just hand you a game. It's easy.
Nice. Yeah, I just wanted to give them credit because they're the video I watched today to get an idea how you play your game. But yeah, it was good. It was good.
So I'm curious if you guys have any future expansion plans, or maybe even some of the stretch goals that you might be able to tease for us.
Yeah. So we've really been kind of debating back and forth on stretch goals for this one, and I think this is probably our first full game that we decided we're not going to have any, just because when we made the review copies and had this whole plan of how we wanted it to look, we really wanted it to like be the game. Like we don't want to mess around like and say, oh well, we'll start with wooden monuments and then we'll make minis. It's like no. We want it like this. We want to make this like high quality. This is our 6th Kickstarter and our 5th game. So we're not going to mess around with that. And stretch goals sometimes can be hard to plan for too, especially if you're making large jumps in quality. So we're like, let's just start high quality because that's what we want to make and that's what we want to put out there. But as far as expansion goes, Jay has been tinkering with some different things. Right now, there's not really terrain on the board, but he has some ideas on how to incorporate some terrain pieces and have that affect the rules. And so that could be something down the road we're looking at. But like I said, the game by itself right now really shines and does quite well just by itself. And so that's why we're really excited and get it out there, get it very high quality to start with. And we think that's the best way to go on this one.
That's awesome. So if someone comes across this video after the Kickstarter is done, since the Kickstarter is going on now, if they happen to miss it, where will they be able to get the game? Are you going to sell it online? Will it be in retail?
Yeah, we'll definitely be having online at our through our website, sideroomgames.com. We usually have lots of retailer backers, and so that'll be an option as well. And we've recently actually started partnering with different retailers and distributors in the United States, as well as across the world, for localized versions or exclusive U.S. and Canada versions. And so we'll have all that information on our website. But yeah, like I said, we plan on having this available after the Kickstarter, and we usually have a pretty large late pledge window. So you'll be able to get that information from the Kickstarter site if you catch it late and be able to get back in and late pledge on it.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely bring it up here to Canada.
Yeah,
we need it up. We need it up here in Canada. So the Kickstarter is going on now. Definitely go check this out. The game sounds amazing. I can't wait to see it myself. Dustin, it's been a pleasure speaking to you about the game. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks, guys, for watching. Really appreciate it. Again, check out Elements of the Gods on Kickstarter. Go to sideroomgames.com and get more information. And make sure you hit the subscribe button below. It is very awesome.